Today on the Wise News Network, we're in the studios with some special guests from Piedmont Lithium, and we're going to be talking about the Gaston County project mainly. So, welcome to the studio, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I guess as an introduction, can you just introduce yourselves and what your role with Piedmont Lithium is?
My name is Monique Parker. I'm the Senior Vice President of Safety, Environment, and Health. I've been with the organization 2.5 years.
And I'm Erin Sanders. I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate Communications and Investor Relations, and I've been with Piedmont a little over 2 years.
Thank you guys so much for coming in today. And today we're going to be talking specifically about water because we know that many of the community's questions about the Carolina Lithium Project tend to revolve around water. We thought that it would be in the best interest of our community if these lovely ladies came in and had a little conversation about Piedmont Lithium's water plans. So my first question for y'all is if you can outline the water sources that your mining operations will rely on, and how can you ensure their sustainability?
So, from a standpoint of our mining operations, we look at our project in three different phases. We have the mining, we have our concentrator, and then we have our conversion plant. When it comes to the mining itself, we will use minimal water for our water trucks for dust suppression and those types of things. So, not a heavy lift on water. For the concentrator plant, we will have water use. Both mining and concentrator water can be water that comes from stormwater, recycled water. It doesn't have to be as pure as the municipal water. So initially, we will draw some water from the local streams and combine it with municipal water until we start doing real mining and get some influx from groundwater. And then we will utilize groundwater for mining and concentrator operations. Um, when we come to the conversion plant, the criticality of the quality of that water is important. So that water will come from a municipal. So we will get that water. Right now, the plan is for Two Rivers out of Gastonia. That is how we will acquire water. So from a sustainability perspective, obviously municipal water, I mean, we've already worked with them. They understand the quantity we need. They understand the quality we need. And they've already agreed that they can supply that from their system based on all the inputs and outputs that they have. When you come to the mining and concentrator side, as we talked about using water from the local streams and then groundwater influx, we will be monitoring that very closely to ensure that we're not depleting any of those natural resources. And that's why we would have the option to bring in municipal water if necessary to ensure that we're having no impact on the environment from our operations.
That makes sense. Can you explain a little bit what the monitoring system would look like?
So when it comes to we will have to monitor, and we don't have these are the permits that we haven't acquired yet in regards to water withdrawal. And then from a standpoint, we have to monitor one, how much water we may withdraw, and then we have to understand how much groundwater we are getting into our system. So both of those would be requirements to understand the incoming water to our process and our plants.
Okay, understandable. And then how will you handle and treat wastewater that is generated by the mining operation?
So we will have two wastewater treatment plants on site, one for our one for our concentrator plant, sorry, and one for our conversion plant. They will treat the water that is going through the process. So any water that is physically in the process that's touching equipment and those types of things all goes through our wastewater treatment. Once we understand the constituents of that water, we will design our wastewater treatments to be able to treat and contain whatever water is necessary. That water will then go to Two Rivers for further treatment. So our agreement with Two Rivers is not only to supply municipal water, but to also take our wastewater from our site, just like any other sewer system, to get it back for their further treatment.
All right. And that actually kind of goes into my next question about how wastewater will travel from the mining site to the wastewater treatment plant.
So the engineering of that project hasn't been completed. Will be a joint project that we take on with Gaston County and Two Rivers to do the engineering work. Through that engineering, they will identify what is the right path and process to get all of that piping to and from. Once that engineering is done, then they'll know the layout, the length, and all those things for that piping system to go from the water supply that's already at the Applegate corporate location in Dallas.
Mhm.
There is municipal water to that point, so they will extend water to our location from there, and then the sewer line will come all the way from our site back to that same location where they already have sewer systems.
Okay.
I got a question. Like for the water and sewer, you're using two rivers. Is there a reason that we're not using the city of Cherryville system?
I'm glad you asked that question because I should have referenced that closer. Um, we will, so the agreement is that the water line itself will come from two rivers. There will be a connection into the Cherryville system. It's one of the things that we agreed with in the community.
Yeah, the community
Def-
development agreement with Cherryville, we agreed that we would purchase the water from Cherryville. So they will get that revenue from us. So it's part of the community benefit to Cherryville.
Okay.
So the water gets to Cherryville, goes through their, whether it's through a meter, through their actual system, and then all of our water will be metered from the city of Cherryville.
Okay. And so will any of the waste go back to Cherryville or is it going to two rivers?
All of the wastewater will go back to two rivers.
Okay.
And then I did have that question in here. Why specifically did you choose the Two Rivers water treatment facility as opposed to the Cherryville water treatment facility or even one that's in Shelby or Lincolnton even?
So there was an extensive study done based on the quantity of water we will need
Mm-hmm.
and then the quantity of water that will need to be treated. And that study evaluated the resources and capabilities of each of those municipalities to understand if they could handle it. Based on the outcome of that study, Two Rivers came out on top in regards to having the ability to produce the amount of water we need and to treat the amount of water we need for a long term perspective. There would be a lot of different um, systems that would need to be modified at the other locations,
Mm-hmm.
which is why Two Rivers came out as the outcome as a location.
Alrighty.
One thing I want to add to the discussion about the wastewater is I think it's important for people to understand that that's a closed loop. None of the wastewater, any of the water that touches our systems will go into the rivers or streams. And I think some people think that, maybe we're going to discharge into the rivers and creeks, and we're not.
That was a question that I had. My next one was actually going to be if at any point of the process wastewater will be put back into the environment before being treated. Do you know why it would be a concern or maybe a misunderstanding of the community why people would think that this would be a part of the process if it isn't?
Well, I mean, we have communicated that there will be some water that leaves our site that goes into the rivers and streams.
Right.
And I think it's just an understanding of which waters go where. And so when you look at our water balance, we specifically show that processed water, again, as Erin mentioned, anything that touches equipment or a process completely goes through the wastewater system. But there will be stormwater, there will be groundwater that comes onto our property that we will put back into streams, the streams and wetlands in the area. But I think that's where some of the confusion has lied because there will be some waters that leave our site that go into the streams, but those are really all natural waters in the area, whether it's stormwater or the groundwater.
Okay. I think maybe it would be beneficial. Would you mind providing a brief explanation? What's the difference between wastewater, groundwater, stormwater?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think everybody's a little confused on the water. Like you're getting some water from Cherryville probably for the facilities, the buildings, the process, but you mentioned you're getting water from two rivers also.
So all of the water will come from Two Rivers, but we will pay Cherryville for that water. So Cherryville's water system will not directly feed. We won't be taking any water from Cherryville's current water system.
Okay.
So it will be fed from Two Rivers, bypassing through Cherryville to get to us.
Okay.
I know it's very complicated and it's not
Well, I'm just trying
easy.
to figure out, are we utilizing any Cherryville water at all?
We are not anticipating to use any Cherryville water at this point. Cherryville water, the water will come from Two Rivers, and Cherryville will. If you think of it this way, and again, the details haven't been worked out because we're very early in the process. But it may be simply that the water's coming from Two Rivers, and there's a meter, and then that we are metering how much water the plant gets. That meter is owned by Cherryville.
Okay.
That may be one simplified way to look at it, but again, those details haven't been worked out completely
So
as
all the
to
piping and all that still needs to be worked out.
yes, without a doubt,
Yeah,
and that's where that engineering that we talked about comes from. That
gotcha.
work has to be completed for us to be able to definitively say how we will integrate completely with Cherryville.
But I think it's important that our project would bring municipal water to this area, because we don't have it right now. And I think you saw over at our exploration office the map of what it might
Yes.
look like around the project. But we've got a map of what it might look like. As Monique said, the engineering hasn't been completed yet, but the water line running around our project will offer an opportunity potentially for neighbors who want to
Hmm.
hook into municipal water. We'll also use it for fire suppression, and obviously we'll have offices and things too, in addition to our systems that need it.
Yeah, Gaston County has never had a community water sewer system.
Mhm.
Some of the other counties have, like Cleveland and Lincoln, have water. So it may help Gaston County to have municipal water, like you said.
Hmm.
Yes, sir. And your question was, explain the different water types,
Yes.
groundwater, municipal water, stormwater. So I think it's obviously we all understand stormwater. It's whatever rain comes down on the property and hits any land on our property. That's what we consider stormwater. It hasn't been involved in our process. The only thing it's touching are the buildings and whatever ground surfaces are uncovered. That is stormwater. We, because of the permits that we will receive, we will have to capture and rest, test, and treat that water. So stormwater is one where we have to be in real good control of what that looks like and how we'll manage it. Then there's groundwater. We will come in contact with groundwater when we start our mining operation. So when we open a pit, obviously, at some point, we're going to hit the level of the water table where the groundwater will start coming into our pit areas. That water we will have to pump out of the pits, one for the safety of our people and our processes, and that water will sit in what we call sedimentation ponds. Those sedimentation ponds are to allow any sediments that are in that water to settle out, and then we'll test it and treat it if necessary before we discharge it. So we have sedimentation basins, which is where our stormwater goes into. We have sedimentation ponds, which is where there will be a combination of stormwater and groundwater. Both of those water bodies are waters that would go back into the streams. Now, processed water or wastewater is water that's within our processing plants in the system. So anything that's in a pipe, anything that's in, tanks and vessels, all of that water goes through our on-site wastewater treatments that then go to two rivers. So you have what I call natural waters, storm and ground. Those are the waters that go back into our streams. And then you have municipal water, which is what we will send back into our wastewater treatment system and go back.
Thank you for the clarification. I think that those distinctions will definitely help. How does Piedmont Lithium intend to conserve water usage as much as possible?
So our goal is to be stewards of the environment, obviously, in anything we do. I mean, our our platform as a company is to make the world more sustainable by supporting EV market. So we're looking at how much can we recycle our water within our process. There's been a lot of engineering done to use as much water on a reoccurring basis in the system. So we minimize how much we have to actually treat and send back from a wastewater perspective. When it comes to the natural waters, we've already looked at minimizing and using recycling there as well. So even if we're bringing stormwater or groundwater into our plant, we're still being conservative and recycling as much as possible so that we're not pulling any more than we need to from those resources in order to further the processing. Now, that's something that we will continually evaluate through our as we build our plants and start operating the plants is how can we do more on the conservation side of water use. Those other water sources that we talked about, we've got to have fire water. We have to have dust suppression. Those are things where we will also be as conservative as possible in order to minimize. So when you talk about dust suppression, summer times, obviously, you probably need a little more because it's drier. Wintertime, you don't use as much because it's more natural moisture in the air and the ground is a little bit more concentrated as far as settled, if you will, from not being able to generate dust.
I think it would be helpful to note. I've had a lot of people ask about mining and intense water usage.
Yes.
And I think the confusion there is if you Google lithium mining, there are different types of lithium mining. And what we're doing is hard rock mining. There's also brining or brine mining, and that uses a lot of water. Okay, the whole process is pumping water into the environment and bringing the lithium up with that water into giant pools. So if you Google that, you might read about water intensity. And brining often occurs in, you know, water.
Scarce.
Thank you. Brining often occurs in water scarce areas, so it can have a real impact on the environment. So I've had people say, well, isn't it very water intensive? The mining part is not. We don't want the water in with the hard rock.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, could you elaborate on your strategies for mitigating the environmental impact on groundwater associated with mining activities? Kind of like we were just talking about, the different kinds of water. I know that the groundwater that does come up from the pit will be settled and monitored.
Hmm.
Monitored. Um, just, I was wondering if you could talk about how you're going to protect that groundwater before it could potentially be released after being in the sedimentary basins.
So the way I mean, obviously, it's a natural open environment pond. So our best way to protect it is to let nature do a lot of that. So our ponds will be generated in a way where there will be good foundations. So that we're not introducing any other contaminants to those surfaces. And then, like I said, there's continuous monitoring of the water itself, the quality and the quantity. And therefore, before we can even discharge it into the local streams, we will know what that looks like in regards to any constituents. And a lot of times, because of the naturally occurring contaminants in the groundwater themselves, we will be responsible for creating water that's cleaner or better than what's already there in the natural streams, just from the standpoint of what we can legally discharge based on contaminant levels.
How many of those sedimentary basins will there be on the site?
So between our sedimentation ponds and our sedimentation basins, there's around 40 of them on our site because I mean we have a large site.
Hmm.
There's going to be a lot of water generated from that site. So again, as I mentioned, any groundwater and stormwater that touches the site, we have to capture before it can be discharged.
How will Piedmont Lithium monitor the quality of its wastewater?
Same type of system. So it's all enclosed. So there will be internal systems that are looking at pH, looking at solids, looking at a multitude of different parameters.
Hmm.
And we have to test that and monitor it before we can release it because we will have an agreement with Two Rivers on the quality the water has to be for them to even accept it. So just as we have requirements on the water that we discharge into streams, we will have requirements on the water that we can discharge to Two Rivers as well. So all of our water has to meet those requirements, and our internal systems will monitor and treat accordingly to meet those standards.
And then, just kind of for a reiteration, I know we've mentioned this before, but the water will be pre-treated at the Piedmont Lithium facility before it's then through the sewer systems goes to the Rivers treatment facility where it will be treated again before it is put into the nature or natural water resources again.
Yes, ma'am. We will treat, they will treat, and then they would release.
Will Piedmont Lithium monitor the water in surrounding creeks just to make sure that there is no runoff or any kind of contamination in the water sources around the site?
So we're not anticipating monitoring the creeks and streams around our property. But what we will have and what we will do is we will have wells surrounding our property. So we will be looking at groundwater throughout that process to understand quality and quantity of the groundwater around the site. And then we will have all of the mechanisms in place to evaluate the water before we enter into those streams. But we're not planning right now to do any long-term or reoccurring testing of the bodies of water around our property.
And then I notice, you said right now, and then a few times throughout the interview, you said now, which kind of to me indicates that if something were to come up in the future and you did need to alter the plan, it's not set in stone right now. This can change.
Correct. Like with any type of operation, any type of permitting process, we have to live in the real world. So, all of our permits are based on studies and tests and evaluations. as we start operations, whatever truly happens could modify anything that we have today. And so that is one reason why I say right now, because it's a living process, it's a living plant, and therefore we have to adapt to the current situation at that time.
Alrighty. Are there any specific regulations or guidelines that you'll adhere to regarding water usage and discharge? I feel like we've kind of just answered that a little bit throughout the conversation. But if you wanted to a little bit go into how, I guess, the state requires you to um, adhere to any specific guidelines, maybe that would help.
Yeah, no worries.
I
So
could rephrase the question if that would help.
you can rephrase it if you like, but I understand
Okay.
what you're asking.
Okay.
Earlier, I mentioned that we will have to withdraw water from the natural streams initially because until we start opening pits, groundwater will not infiltrate into the pits. And so, in that initial draw of water from the streams, there is a water withdrawal permit that we would have to obtain. And we understand what that looks like. We understand the requirements of that. That permitting process has not begun because that's one that you do closer to time of operation. But that is one permit that we will have to obtain. And with that, we have to monitor how much we're taking, what is the quality of that water that we're bringing in. The other permits that we'll have to get is we will have a permit or an agreement, if you will, with Two Rivers on the water that we bring onto site from them, and you know what that looks like, and how we will get that water. And then the third, when it comes to the groundwater, we will have to actually monitor the groundwater that comes onto property through our mining activities to understand again quality and quantity of that water. So those are when we talk about the three different types of water, those are the requirements that we have in order to be able to monitor and understand impact to the environment. One, how much are we taking from the streams? One, how much is coming from groundwater? And two, how much water we're getting from municipality.
Alrighty. And why I asked that one already. Sorry.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
I think, obviously we read a lot of the questions and comments on Facebook and we talk to people in the community. And, there are these assertions that we're going to contaminate the water in the creeks and streams. And I just think it's important for people to realize, the work that Monique's done, she and her team have had to convince the state that we can operate with the right systems and protocols and be within regulations, meet or exceed their standards. So it's all highly regulated. And on top of that, it would not make any business sense for us if we didn't do that. Economically, if we were contaminating rivers and streams, first of all, we'd get shut down. Second of all, we'd be fined. Third, we'd have no license to operate again. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to contaminate anything. Just as professionals, Monique's devoted her career to environment, health, and safety. So I want to get that across because we feel very passionately about that.
And I understand that Piedmont Lithium did just receive its North Carolina state mining permit. What do those next steps for your organization look like after receiving this permit?
So right now we have actually received our approval for our permit. We're working with the state on finalizing the draft of that, and then we will have the final draft once we post our bond as well. So with any mining operation in North Carolina, there's a bond that goes with that permit. In our case, we have to secure a $1 million bond, which is the maximum amount. And once the state has that bond, they will finalize the permit. We will have that in hand, and then we will evaluate our next phases of what that looks like in regards to rezoning. There are other permits we need to achieve, and then looking at further funding opportunities.
Alrighty. And the other permits include air, water, like we've been discussing. Are there any others?
Those are the primary. Air and our NPDS permit are the two big permits that we're pushing through right now to get to the finish line.
Alrighty. And then in that press release y'all released on April 15th, I did read that your organization has also been considering different avenues for funding. What do some of those avenues look like?
Well, obviously, it takes a lot of money to build something like this, and this project, I would note, is planned to be the only integrated project in the world where you've got the mining, the concentrator plant, and then the hydroxide production all on one site. In most cases, you have mining in Australia or somewhere else, and then that gets shipped primarily to China to be processed. So um, we it's going to take quite a bit of money to build that. So what we'd like to do is look at both government funding. There is an ATVM loan process through the Department of Energy. And we'd like to bring in a strategic partner that provides some combination of capital and expertise to this project.
Back to the groundwater, like the surrounding wells, will you guys test surrounding wells or would the homeowner be responsible for testing their wells?
We will not test any personal wells. So we will be responsible for the wells that we have on our property that are at our property boundary. And obviously, there's some of those connecting properties where we may own the property already. But at the end of the day, the homeowner or the property owner is responsible for their personal wells. But we will do all of the testing necessary for our wells at our perimeter boundaries and any other wells that we feel could have a material impact.
Now, speaking of land that you own, I think initially it was around 1,500 acres is what you're utilizing now, and then maybe 3,000 acres in the future. Is that correct?
So our mine permitted area is 1,548 acres. So that is the acreage within our mine permit boundary. As a company, we have ownership in over 3,000 acres in the area.
Have all the owners committed to selling their property, the land that you need?
So within our mine permit boundary, we either own the land already or we have a long-term lease agreement with the landowner.
Okay. One question, since I'm a Cherryville native, so I'm in real estate, and I didn't understand. Like in real estate, a lot of times you don't purchase land till the zoning's approved or the permitting's approved. But you guys went ahead and purchased land without all those conditions. Why did you go ahead and purchase land and basically remove structures without permitting, without zoning, without any approval so far?
So a lot of the work that we had to do was preliminary work to even establish the information necessary to submit our permits. And we could have done that without land ownership, but it makes it a lot easier as an organization to have access to property and land that we're working to get permits on so we can do the necessary testing of the groundwater, looking at parameters of other things, doing some exploration drilling on understanding the ore body itself. So there are a lot of ways that work occurs, but as a company, we made the decision that the land ownership piece was critical to make ease of access and our ability to gain that information so that we can put our mine permit together easier. We could put our air permit together and our MPDS permit. That is one of the main reasons why land ownership was important for us.
And it's pretty typical of this process. A lot of the mines out west are on government land. That's not the case here on the East Coast. So assembling the land that you would need to then, move forward as a project, that's pretty typical.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anything about the water treatment plans, about the Piedmont Lithium's water usage in general that you would like to add on to, or is there anything that you would like to say about the process in general?
I will say, I mean, the process from a state permitting process is a very user friendly process. The regulators have been overwhelmingly accommodating and helping us answer a ton of questions that we go in with. Obviously, we understand how to put a permit together, but our project is very unique. It's not just a run of the mill, you put up a building and you have manufacturing and everything's the same. And so we've really respect the amount of time and energy the regulators have had with us to one, make sure that everything we're doing is proper and that we're going to achieve the goals that we're looking to achieve, which is one, being very mindful of the environment that we're working in and being conservative with how we use those resources and how we return those resources.
I would add that, the studies that Monique's team has done have shown that we will not materially impact the streams and creeks, through all of the the systems and everything that Monique explained. We don't, and we insert the word materially because our lawyers make us do it, in part because we may return water better than it came into our pits, as she explained. So we may change it in that regard, but we won't be permitted to contaminate, and do some of these things that some of the folks in the community have been concerned about. So we would love, we've held our town halls where you can come talk to Monique, you can come talk to the hydrogeologist, you can talk to our experts in each area of our project and get those questions answered. So I really encourage people to reach out to us. If they want to come out to the exploration office like you guys did and learn more, we're happy to do that, because we want to help educate people about how we're doing this, because mining is very different today than it has been in the past. And I know a lot of people in this area have experience with past mining and some of the practices that were used then. But as a society, we've matured and grown and learned about how to do this in a way that is less impactful to the environment and to the community.
I know the Cherryville community, we understand the jobs that will be brought and the money. I think one of the largest concerns is what it will look like after. Um, like the Beam Hallman mine was supposed to be closed, but they left it open and it's just a pit full of water, mostly of arsenic. And arsenic, of course, is a byproduct of spodumene areas, and it causes. I'm not a geologist, but that whole area has a high concentration of arsenic per the North Carolina map.
Mm-hmm.
So what will it look like at the end for grandkids and grandchildren? Is it going to be a brownfield? Can you build on it? What's it going to look like?
So, from a standpoint of reclamation, which is what we call that after mining activities have occurred, we are going to be doing what we call progressive reclamation. So, as we open pits, we're going to be filling those pits back in with that same rock that was there. So, rock that doesn't have spodumene or other beneficial use will go back into those pits. Um, Now, will we take it to ground level and leave it? No, unfortunately, there will be some hills, we'll call them, in the area where those pits are. There will be one pit that we leave that open that will have the opportunity to generate and contain water in it. As you mentioned, arsenic is naturally occurring in the area. So if the water in that pit were to have high arsenic, it wouldn't be due to our mining operations. It would be due to the naturally occurring arsenic in the water already.
But that area has a very high concentration of arsenic already in it.
Yes, sir.
One of the highest veins in the whole state.
Yes, sir. Based on the maps that we've seen, just like you've seen,
Mhm.
there is a what we call the hot spots of what testing has been done to show higher levels of arsenic. And so we will own that pit with that water forever, and we will make sure that we're monitoring and controlling and containing it, because it's one of the responsibilities that we will have in order to ensure that it doesn't have any further impact.
And I do want to clarify, the arsenic is not actually contained in the spodumene. It is actually in the host rock, which is the volcanic rock. So it's not, it's been explained to me by our chief geologist, it's not integrally involved with lithium mining, or with spodumene. It just happens to be the host rock that's here. And that's what the spodumene pushed up through millions of years ago, was that volcanic rock. That volcanic rock, which we call waste rock just because there's nothing in it that we want to sell, but it's the same rock that you use for gravel out in your parking lot, that you use in highways, in those projects. So it's naturally occurring in there to differing degrees, and obviously, so that's one of the things that we'll monitor. But it's not inherently related to our project and our mining. We don't use arsenic in the process. We don't add arsenic anywhere. It's just something that we will also have to deal with and monitor, as we.
Yeah, it's part of the decaying of the volcanic rock. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm not a geologist, but it's a lot of minerals decaying causes that,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
so.
Yeah, exactly. So when you look at the maps that are available, you'll see hotspots in areas that may not contain lithium and where no mining has been done
I mean,
previously.
me as a citizen, I would love to say, "Oh, we're gonna turn it into a park and a lake, and you can go swimming in it, and you can go fishing and all this," but, you know, I don't know if that's gonna be the case.
And so, I mean, there's an example of mining reclamation in Kings Mountain, where you have the trail. I forget the name of the trail,
The Greenway
the
there.
greenway there. So reclamation, it could be a park. Now it could have walking trails with hills around it, but when we talk about long-term impact and what the final resolution of that site will be, that's actually something that hasn't been defined. And once we get to that point, we want to engage the community to understand what the community would like for that area to look like. And so I can't tell you today what our closed reclaimed site will look like in regards to its use. But I can tell you that our goal is to incorporate the community to understand the needs of that time and evaluate how we can accommodate that site to the needs.
And the life cycle of the mine with the permit you have recently acquired approval for, that's about 11 years, correct?
11 and a half years is our life of mine currently.
Okay.
Our conversion plant is anticipated to be a 30-year conversion plant. So there's, a difference in that time frame. And obviously, as we can begin to do operations of mining, there may be the life of that mine may be extended. We
Mhm.
may find more resources. Our exploration work gives us a great indication of what's there, but you don't really know completely how long you're going to have until you start actually having mining activities. So what we can say from a confirmed standpoint or a resource that's been fully defined is 11 and a half years.
And like you mentioned, you'll be doing that progressive reclamation. So I suppose at the end of the life cycle of the mine, when whether this 11 years period gets extended or it stays the 11 years, the final reclamation would happen at the end of the mine's life cycle, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And so in the process before the end of that life cycle, community members have the opportunity to have to ask questions about what the reclamation process would look like, and would they have maybe the opportunities to submit ideas about what they would like to see.
Most definitely. We will definitely involve the community in what that looks like. And it won't be, "Oh, we're closing tomorrow, come and tell us what you want." We're going to know when we're getting near to the end of life. And so those conversations will happen very early because we also want to be proactive in planning how we close that mine
Mhm.
at whatever time that is.
So Rusty, to go back to your question, the mining portion of our project is only about 25% of the acreage. So that part is where, once we fill the rock back in, there may be some hills. Like Monique said, they may be walking trails, biking trails. So that's the mining portion, but the whole rest of the project could be reclaimed for anything. It could be used for, development for housing. It could be returned to agricultural uses. And this, it has been proven all around the world with mining reclamation. So there are great examples of all different uses for this type of land.
Yeah, I think for the citizens, they would like to know what the end game will be, you know,
Hmm.
instead of, well, it might be this, and a hill, is a hill going to be a 100-foot hill or a 200-foot hill, or, we
Hmm.
really don't know what it's going to look like, and so I guess to the viewers and the readers, some sense of what is the closure going to look like,
Hmm. Right. So, like Monique said, if you go over to Kings Mountain and you can look at it, you can see what it looks like over there, over at the Greenway, and they use it for recreation. The hills that were created by their reclamation. So there are good examples of that, and we can share those. We had some of the pictures out
Right.
at the
But
exploration
that was
office.
like a 120-foot deep mine, correct?
No, I believe their dome or their hill is about 120 feet.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
that Crowder's Mountain or is
Are you talking
No,
about the Beam Holman or the other one, the
no, the
Albemarle?
Albemarle.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. So it will evolve over time. Another thing, Monique has talked about getting community input. We plan as we move forward to develop a community advisory board that can give us input all along the way. And we'll develop that board as we move into rezoning so that community members can give us input on all of these various
And
topics.
Duke's doing a study of the wells in the area, which actually may help the citizens even more because we really don't know what they're consuming now.
Right.
So that
Right.
may actually help the consumers and the residents in the area even more.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
definitely. The county did a study not too long ago, a few years ago, that created the map that's on their website right now that does show potential for higher levels of arsenic and other constituents where people are on wells. So I think it's great to be informed and know what you're drinking and what you're being exposed to.
Alrighty. I guess my last question that I want to ask y'all is, I know that Emily Blackburn Winter, she is the community relations
Manager.
manager for Piedmont Lithium. If community members have concerns, should they make her their point of contact, reach out to her for questions, maybe tours of the exploration office, and just questions about community related concerns regarding the Carolina Lithium project?
Yes, absolutely. Emily stays out at our office on Main Street that you may have seen, and there's a storefront there. So people can stop by, they can call, they can email us. We've got on our website email addresses, and people make use of it regularly. They'll email us, call us with various questions, and stop by and see her. And anyone who wants to come out to the exploration office and see and touch the rock and hear all about the project are very welcome. So Emily is a good contact for that.
Thank you. Yes, the Wise News team did stop by the exploration office, and we did get to see, like Erin mentioned, we got to see the rock. We got to see a little bit about what the process would look like, and it was definitely an informative resource. If you are interested, as Erin just said, you can reach out to Emily Winter and set up an appointment to go ahead and attend the exploration office. Is there anything else that y'all would like to add?
No, I thank you for what you're doing because part of my job is helping to explain to the community what we're doing. We want to answer questions. We want to be transparent, and we believe we've got a great project. We believe it will be beneficial to this community, but we also understand the concerns that come with it. So we want to answer those questions.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
We appreciate you guys coming in, and it's a service to the community that you guys come on camera and speak, and we really appreciate it.
Well,
Really do.
likewise.
We appreciate the opportunity.
All right. For the Wise News Network, I'm Grace Smith.
And I'm Rusty Wise. Till you see us again, thanks for Piedmont Lithium for coming in. Erin and Monique, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.